This is Marriage on the Half Shell, Raw and Exposed. Well, we're back after Christmas, and we took a little
Vacation.
vacation. We took a little trip up to the mountains, just the two of us, so I could play in the snow. Not really your thing, more my thing.
Right.
But it's the end of January now, so we're back, and we are going to talk tonight about something that we call breaking the curse.
And this has to do with breaking the curse of divorce, where we've seen children of parents who got divorced later get divorced themselves.
Yeah.
And it just keeps going on and on.
Sets up a pattern, yeah.
Setting up that pattern.
Yeah.
And obviously, children of parents who never got divorced can still get divorced, and the children of parents who did get divorced may stay together. So, but it is a pattern in society.
Yes.
And we wanted to just take a short time and go over that and what it causes besides just more divorce.
Right.
Okay?
Yeah. So just a little background here. One of the reasons we're covering this, Jay and I are Generation X, and I think our generation was probably the first one to kind of experience this on a larger scale. Our parents were baby boomers, and divorce rates started to tick up in the early 1970s. That's when divorce rates really started to skyrocket, because no-fault divorce became a thing, and there was just a lot of factors involved there. But I come from a family where there was divorce. My parents got divorced when I was 8 years old.
Right.
So that was 1976. This is when they got divorced. So, right after, all of the... There were a lot of people that I knew growing up. A lot of my friends came from quote-unquote broken homes. Where there was just the single mom, or they were going back and forth, or whatever it was.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I had the exact opposite experience. I mean, I think I maybe knew by the time I was in college, I knew two divorced, or two families where there was divorce. Maybe three, but generally everyone in my neighborhood, generally, as far as I could tell, as far as I knew, stayed together.
Right.
Didn't hear a lot about it in school, say high school or whatever. So it was just a different experience. Of course,
Right.
my dad passed away. My parents stayed together till he
Right.
passed away.
Yeah.
So that's my experience. So,
But statistically, there's a lot of people from our generation who came from broken homes.
yeah, I mean,
Statistically, that is true.
we've talked about the statistics behind where you generally hear the 50% divorce rate.
I'm not really sure that that's
We don't.
accurate.
Yeah, we don't.
but-
It depends on what that means and
Right.
understanding what they're actually measuring and
Yeah.
all that.
If they're polling all the people in Hollywood, then yes, that would be an actual fact. Or the
Well,
Disney culture,
If
that
you-
kind of thing.
yeah, but if you look at, like, say, first time marriages breaking up alone, not second and third marriages, because
Yeah.
once you've divorced the first time, you have a higher chance of not making it the second time,
Right.
and then even higher chance not making it in a third marriage. And
Right.
there's just that, and that really shouldn't contribute to the rate.
Right.
But anyway, it's still higher than it should be.
Obviously.
It's probably over 25%, but definitely less than 50. And it may be, and of course, some of the statistics will say it's actually getting better, and there are reasons for that.
Right.
Not
we'll
because
kind of
marriages
go
are
into that a
staying
little bit.
together.
Yeah.
So,
Why does it matter, though?
why do we
Yeah.
Why do we say we should break the curse? Well, why don't you go over your crisis chart there?
Oh,
So,
well, okay.
That's
So-
the biggest reason. It's not just for children,
Right.
for the children's
Right.
sake, but it is. Children suffer a lot when there's when a marriage fails,
Yes.
and I get the whole argument about don't stay together just for the children because they see all the fighting or whatever. So we would say you should be working on your marriage instead of fighting.
And we might, at the end of this podcast, we might have a little segment where we go over fighting clean in front of your kids because it matters.
Well, we'll just talk about that.
Well, yeah, we'll go over that a little bit. But
So this has to do with, I'll introduce the
Right.
chart, but you
Okay.
can read it. But it's just a little chart that talks about what happens with when fathers are
right.
absent from the home. And it may be simply because of divorce and the dad doesn't see the kids, obviously isn't in the home anymore, even if he sees them on the weekends or whatever. Or there's a single mom who never got married because the dad, got her pregnant and then took off because they weren't married. There was no
Yeah.
commitment
Right.
for him to stay.
Yeah.
And so we can talk about where we were versus where we are in a few minutes, but go through this.
It's just a chart that I found online. And it says the father absence crisis in America. And this is real. I mean, there's a lot of young people running around they have not put themselves together in a way that's going to help them move forward in their lives. And it is because it's an absence of a strong male figure in their life. Right. And this is something, what does it say? Father factor. Nearly all societal ills facing America today are because of a lack of fathers. This is, there's a lot of statistics here. Research shows when a child is raised in a father-absent home, he or she is affected in the following ways. So, 4 times greater risk of poverty, 7 times more likely to become pregnant as a teen, and that one right there, that is because girls can act like we don't need men or we don't need boys, but it's actually not the case. You need a dad, and you need a dad to guide you and direct you. And when you don't have that in your life, you're going to go find it. Whatever you're missing, you're going to go find it.
But you'll look for a male
Yes.
counterpart,
Someone
to pay
someone to pay
attention
attention
to
to you. Yes.
and so on.
Yes.
And then the girl ends
Yeah.
up getting pregnant because she doesn't demand marriage first.
Right.
So girls, whoever's listening to this, don't give up your virginity to get a guy because you're doing it backwards. Because guys don't care. If you're willing to give it up and they don't have to make a commitment, it's easy.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Why would they make that commitment?
Yeah.
Right? Especially today, there aren't any shotgun weddings, and
No.
those generally, I don't know whether they work out or not actually, but I can't see them actually working out.
Yeah.
I've known a few couples who got married because the girl got pregnant.
Mm-hmm.
We've actually had some friends who did that, and then they later ended up divorced
Yeah.
because they didn't check each other out. Right? They just had sex and
Yeah.
she got pregnant.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's my
There's your
warning
dad.
to
Your
the
dad.
girls.
Yeah. There's your
There's,
dad. Yeah.
your dad advice. And boys, if you're listening to this, if you aren't a leader enough to not have sex,
Keep it in your pants.
fine.
Sorry.
But if you're not a leader enough and respect the girl enough to say no, this is not right until marriage, and this has nothing to do with religion. It's just a matter of fact, and statistically, what you're going to do is you let the hormones take over, and whether you marry the girl or not, you may end up with a kid out there that you might not be able to see.
Yeah.
Or you end up getting married, but then you really didn't check each other out, and and that's on you guys, because you don't have to do this.
Yeah.
You know.
You don't have to
And
follow
girls,
your...
you don't have to do it either.
Yeah.
Don't follow your hormones.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying it's easy. I'm just saying you can do it.
Yeah.
So, enough of that. Go ahead.
Oh, more
Keep
likely
going.
to have behavioral problems. Kids, I would say boys in particular, need to be kept in check at home. They need a dad that'll hold them accountable and, make
be an
sure that
example.
and be an example and make sure that they're behaving like civilized
Young
human
men,
beings,
yeah.
right? I mean, a mom can do some of that, but not all of it. Moms can't. We can't
Right.
do it all. We just can't. We can't.
You can't, and especially if the mom has to go work
Yes.
as a single mom,
Yeah.
then the kids are basically on their own. Whereas with a two-parent family, and we're not talking about who stays home or whatever, but
Yeah.
we're talking about examples in the home, and dads can show that example, and they can also show young men how to treat women
Yes.
with respect, etc., by the way the dad treats the mom.
Mm-hmm.
And then the girls can also see how they should be treated
Right.
by a man.
Right.
Keep going.
More likely to face abuse and neglect. And that again speaks to, if there's not a dad there to look out for you and protect you, then, girls will go out again. They will find a way to get that attention, and sometimes it's not great.
Yeah, so they could be abused by
Yes.
their boyfriend
Yeah.
or whatever, or it could be mom's boyfriend.
Yes, I do.
know,
I do know of a
that
couple
sort
of
of thing.
people. I went to high school with a couple of people that happened to. So
Yeah.
yes,
Okay, what's next?
2 times greater risk of infant mortality. That was interesting. I didn't know about that.
I didn't either.
I'm not. I'll have to look into that because I'm not quite sure how that ties in necessarily. More likely to go to prison. Yeah, and more likely to commit crime. So those two, yes, if you think about it and if you look it up, like the majority of these school shootings that happen, and statistically they're pretty rare. I know that the media makes a big fuss, and they should. I mean, we can't just ignore those stories. But the majority of those people that are school shooters don't have a dad.
Most of
Them. I think there's maybe one exception in the last 20 years. But statistically, most of these kids who go out and commit crime, not just school shootings, but other crime, do not have a dad at home.
Yeah. I mean, boys will go join gangs.
Yes. Because they're also,
see this in the inner city.
girls are looking for attention. Guys want a family. They want to feel like they belong. Right?
There's this belonging.
Yes.
And if there's not that at home, or mom can't be there because she's got to work, and there's no grandmom in the home, for instance, or grandfather, whatever, they're going to go look for companionship, and usually it turns out to be a gang in the cities.
Yeah.
I'm not sure what they do out in the country. Make meth. I don't know.
I don't know. Drugs. I mean, there's drugs and alcohol.
Yeah.
2 times more likely to suffer obesity. That one's interesting too.
That is interesting.
We do have an obesity problem in this country right now, for sure.
Well, I think it's because the reason, and this is a whole different subject, but the reason we're obese is because of the way we eat,
Obviously.
which is processed foods and sugar and soda and all that stuff. And we're not going to go deeply into that, but the perception is that that type of food is cheaper, more affordable, but it's not really in the long run.
No.
But it seems that way. And then, mom's got to work and she's only a single parent and it's a one parent income. And maybe she's not, because various reasons, maybe she didn't get to go to college because she got pregnant.
Yeah.
Or whatever. So statistically, you end up with this case where there's less money available, so they eat poorly. So that kind of explains the obesity. It's kind of linked to that. And then the last one, 2 times more likely to drop out of high school.
Yeah.
Okay, so, and that one is one of the indicators I think we've mentioned before, an indicator for a success, right?
Yeah.
Like, you want your kids to launch out and become adults on their own eventually, and if you drop out of high school and don't have a dad in the home, if you don't wait till marriage to get pregnant, then you're more likely to be impoverished.
Yeah.
And more likely to not succeed.
Yeah.
Right. So, and success, I guess, is defined as having a stable relationship and not being in poverty.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's just related to, the absence of fathers.
Right.
And there's other things we could go into.
Right.
But let's talk about, real quick, just go through the statistics you found related, from now versus the 70s. It's just right there.
Okay. 18% of U.S. households are nuclear families with a married couple and children, down from 40% since the 70s, and the lowest since 1959. Again, I believe that the fact that no-fault divorce became legal in the late 60s, early 70s is a factor here for sure.
Yep.
There are other factors involved in this, and it really is a problem because it does, like, I look at, I'm not bragging on myself, but I look at our marriage as breaking the curse. I hope.
Well, we're not heading for divorce.
No, but I mean, as far as our children's marriages being successful, like, what was it, 5 years ago, maybe less, I don't know. We were the only intact marriage amongst our siblings.
Amongst our siblings.
My brothers both went through nasty divorces. Your sisters both went through, I don't know if they were nasty, but they both split from their spouses, and your mom was a widow at the time, so we're hoping that our marriage has set a better example for our kids. And that's part of it. That's part of breaking the curse. We've got four married kids,
right?
And the 5th one is getting married in June.
Right. Yep.
So, they've all had a better example of marriage than certainly I did.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely.
My parents got divorced when I was 8. My mom, they both remarried a year later. My dad married a fantastic lady who I did not get to spend enough time with as a child. But my mom didn't do so well in that regard. She married an abusive alcoholic, and it was ugly. And he had also been divorced, and I don't know. It's just it's this whole
just a mess.
It's a sordid mess, But it's something that we talk to our kids a lot about, and we try to convey to them the consequences of breaking up a family and breaking up marriages, and they got to see it in real life because they saw their cousins go through all this. It was pretty bad, the the divorces that my brothers went through were, that was pretty bad. There was some awful stuff, and they were in communication with their cousins at the time, so they got to see it up close and personal, you know. But you know, okay, so how do you? We've kind of done a podcast on, what was it? No Plan B.
No Plan B.
Yeah.
I don't know where you're going with this. We also did.
How do you
fight?
Well, yes, but how do you get your marriage to a place where you're going to break the curse? Like, you have to work at it. It's
Right.
not. That's what
Well,
I'm getting
that's where No Plan B comes in.
Yes.
So where you decide we're going to work on this, and we're basically not going to give up.
at. Yeah.
But then you got to go find out the things that you got to do
Yeah.
to make your marriage work. It's not just, okay, get married and, all right, you go do your job, I'll go do mine, and we'll come have dinner together every night and then go party or whatever.
Or let the kids consume all
Or
of
let the
your
kids
time and your
consume your
resources,
marriage
and consume your marriage.
Consume everything. And we're not saying it's all about you and self-fulfillment and all that, because people today seem to have forgotten that when we, you know, in a sense, lay down our lives for others, that's when we become more fulfilled.
Yes.
But when you just pursue fulfillment for your own sake without considering anyone else, then you might have some pleasure, but in the long run, you won't be fulfilled and you won't be happy. And we've seen that as well.
Yes. Yeah.
What are you looking for?
Well, there was actually a quote in this particular article about that very thing, about how somehow in the 60s, you know, we went from love is about self-sacrifice and laying down your life for the other person to no, now it's about my self-fulfillment, my self-esteem, you know, my it's about me. Marriage is about me, and that's where the switch happened. And I'm not surprised it was in the 60s.
No,
you know, 60s and 70s. I'm not surprised at that.
The loss of some of the teaching that parents from the 50s and 40s, and the loss of leadership, the loss of spirituality.
Yeah.
Just we as a country bought into that message from the 60s of free love and free sex and no consequences, and do whatever makes you happy in the moment. And that has affected us all the way out for 60 years later.
Yeah.
And look at us now, right?
Yeah.
So, and we're not talking about self-sacrifice where you get nothing out of it, or you're just a doormat, or anything like that. Right? We're not. That's not the way we live, and that's not what we're talking about, right? But it just, you can find this out too. Statistically, those who serve others are more fulfilled and are more happy.
Yeah.
And so when you serve each other as a couple and then serve your children, meaning raise them and teach them the way to go and all that, you're laying down your life for them. You're giving up your time and your resources for them. But in a sense, that's what life is, about, right? So the fulfillment comes from using our resources for others.
Right.
And there are people who would argue against that. And I think you just end up bitter and angry and discontented when you live for yourself.
I think that you should not make your life about being happy, because what you're going to end up doing is running from one thing to the next, chasing happiness rather than chasing fulfillment right? Mm-hmm. Which is harder, that
It's a long-term thing as
yeah,
opposed to
right.
chasing the next thing that's going to give you pleasure.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
there's plenty of pleasure in a good marriage.
Sure.
We've talked about that as well in our sex episode.
Mm-hmm.
So,
but there's also pleasure in just serving each other and
Yeah,
doing things
and
for
doing
each other
things together,
and doing things together.
and doing family stuff. I mean, we did a ton of stuff with our children.
Yeah. Yeah, going on vacation every
and
year
doing
was something
things,
that we did not do when I was a kid. We
When
didn't
you were
do
a kid.
that.
Yeah, and we did. but
We took our kids every year. We took them to the beach, and
took
and
our
it
kids
was
to the beach
yeah,
and stayed
from
for a
when they
week.
from when they were little.
Yeah.
and we just
Most-
kept it
most
up.
years.
Yeah, most years we would. Yeah,
But we also did other things. I mean,
Sure.
not just once a year. I mean,
Yeah.
we're always doing something,
yeah,
right? Every weekend we'd find something to do. Go apple picking or go to the orchard, or I don't know, go to the zoo or go down to D.C. when we lived up in Maryland, to the museums, or
field trips were a regular thing.
all of that stuff. So, and it was, you could say it was primarily for the kids, but it was, we enjoyed it as well, doing it with them and
Right.
making the memories and all of that. And well, anyway, so the next thing we'll talk about is fighting clean. And we did talk about this in the Good Fight
Yes.
episode,
Yep.
right?
Mm-hmm.
But we thought we'd just go through it again
Right.
real quick.
Because if you're living with the same person for decades, there's going to be conflict.
Sure, but that's how we grow.
Yeah.
If you look at it that way,
Yeah.
and whenever you have a conflict, if you've been doing some of the things that we're going to talk about, we'll just list them. We're not going to go too deep.
We went deeper into that in the other podcast.
Right. If you've been doing those things that build your relationship, which we'll get to, then when you have this conflict, you can have it, and you can even have it in front of your children without the knock down, drag out, insulting each other,
Bringing up stuff from the past.
bringing up stuff from
Yeah.
the past,
Yeah.
and hurting each other. You've got this conflict, and you've got this problem to solve,
Right.
and you need to reach a consensus together, an agreement together, or solve the problem. But if you look at it as a problem, you face that problem, don't face each other. And we've talked about that.
Right. Right.
So you want to just go down this list? We just wrote down a few things.
Don't keep a record of wrongs. So this just refers to, when you get into a conflict, try to keep it about whatever started the conflict. Don't bring up stuff from the past that they did that you said you forgave them for.
Yeah.
But if you're bringing it up again, guess what? You didn't forgive them. That's not what happened.
Right.
You're still hanging on to it.
If you hang on to things, then you're going to get bitter, and that's
Yeah.
going to make things worse for you, not just for them when you're fighting,
Yeah.
but for you, because you're holding on to things that make you angry, bitter, and then you start having contempt, and that's one of those things that we've
contempt
talked
is-
about as
yeah,
well.
No, yeah.
That can destroy a relationship.
Yes.
So you got to get rid of that, because it's not like you're perfect. Okay, so all right, so no record of wrongs, no name calling. So okay,
Yeah.
don't walk away bitter. All right, so solve the problem, even if you can't get it done in a day or before you go to bed or whatever. Get to a point where you're working on it together, right? Where you can go to bed without just being angry at each other. And we talked about that. I mean, it's possible to go to bed angry. but do things that keep your connection, like
Yes.
still be able to go to bed together and hold hands or touch your feet together or whatever, right?
Yeah. And I'm gonna take a little jaunt to the side with this one, because this is something that I didn't struggle with it, but I know that when we would have conflicts, you were like, when we were done discussing it and we felt like the conflict was over, you would walk away and go, okay, well, and you'd get up and just move on, right?
Yeah, I mean, I'm just a gift, I guess. I mean, able to let go of things quickly.
Yes.
Let go of anger pretty quickly.
Yeah.
When I've asked forgiveness and I've received it verbally, then that's it. It's done.
Yeah.
Right? That doesn't mean I don't have to maybe work on something, but in that instance, I'm free, right? Or vice versa.
Well, but see, this was a problem for quite a few years, because I would say, yes, I forgive you, but then you would come back later and say, you're still mad at me. And that was not the case. This is just a male-female thing, I think. Possibly. Because, I don't know, I mean, you would come back and go, no, you're still mad. And I wasn't. I just needed to process all the emotions that came with whatever had just happened.
So maybe it wasn't anger, but
no,
it looked like it.
Sure.
But there was something else going on.
Yeah, so I just needed to finish processing all my emotions so I could just kind of move past it.
All right.
I'm not one to like put it in a box, close it up, and I'm done. That's just not the way I process things.
Okay. So one or the other,
but
of
it
you
could have looked like
way.
bitterness. It could have looked like bitterness,
Okay.
but it was not.
Or just anger. I didn't think it was bitterness.
Yeah.
Bitterness is usually when you continue to hold on.
Yeah.
For long periods of time.
Right.
And we've seen people like that.
Right.
Oh my gosh, they're so unhappy. But anyway, but yeah, so be aware that your spouse may need to process the emotion.
Yes.
And
they may either need to continue talking to you, or they may need space.
Yeah, just a little.
So
space.
It's just and I needed space.
Right.
Like, I just need you to leave me alone for a little bit. I just gotta work all this out in my head, and
right.
We'll get back to where we're supposed to be.
Yeah, but the key is for a little bit and work it out.
Yeah.
So if you find yourself saying I need space, but then you're not working it out, then you're not going to solve it.
Yeah.
You work through the emotions, especially if you've said that you've resolved the conflict. If you haven't, then you got to go back and talk more.
Right.
Okay. Let's see. No one loses the fight or wins the fight. Okay, so we've talked about this, but just real quick, it's like if you only want to win the fight, then what you're saying is that you've married a loser.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you haven't married a loser, but you may form that concept in your mind by just winning the fight, because but think about how selfish that is. It's like, I just want to win.
Yeah.
Right? As opposed to, we just want to solve the problem.
Yeah.
Together.
Yeah.
Okay. So don't put yourself in that position. Last one.
Find ways to stay connected. Well, there's two more here. So find ways to stay connected. So if you're in a conflict, I mean, even when we're in a conflict, we'll sit at the table and hold hands.
Yeah.
So whether we feel like it or not, we still will, okay. We had a little conflict.
We told this story.
No, like 2 weeks ago. 3 weeks ago. This wasn't that long ago. I was working on
I don't even remember.
Okay. See, I was working on a cooking project, and the day prior to that, I had asked you if you would help me with it. And you said, sure, I can make some time in the morning and we'll just knock it out, right? Well, I started it after we had our breakfast, and you just kept sitting at the dining room table, and then you walked through the kitchen like 3 times while I'm working on this cooking project that we were supposed to be doing together, and then you went and sat at your desk and you were doing finance stuff or whatever. And I was getting angrier and angrier because every time you'd walk through the kitchen, I'd be like, why isn't he helping me? He said he would help me. Now, see, you could say that it was your fault, but it was actually partially my fault too. I should have just said, hey, you said you were going to help me. Right?
Yeah.
But I didn't say anything.
Well, you didn't say anything. I forgot and was doing the stuff that I was going to do.
Yeah.
And, we didn't stay connected there. We
No.
didn't say, hey, you know, I mean, so surprise, but men can't read your mind.
Yeah.
But you can't read our minds either. So that's
Well,
why we need to
yeah.
communicate.
So, you know, after I finished it, I went into your office and I was like, I'm kind of angry at you. You know, you said you were going to help me, and you walked through the kitchen like 3 times and you didn't say anything or offer to help or anything. And you were what the kids used to call, you were in your box. You
Okay.
were doing something else, and you didn't even realize, I think, what I was doing.
Right.
It was something
Right.
along those lines, right? But this was that's the first kind of even close to a conflict that we've had, and it's been a long time.
It's been a while. Well, yeah.
But
I mean,
see, it was just a lack of communication. I didn't talk to you, and you just assumed that everything was okay because I didn't tell you anything was wrong.
Well, you didn't. In my mind, you didn't say we're going to start that thing that we talked
Yeah.
about. So I was kind of like, well, she'll let me know when she's ready.
Yeah.
But I didn't. Of course, I didn't realize as I walked by you 3 times. Oh, she's working in the kitchen. Maybe this is the thing. So, anyway, so we didn't communicate.
Yeah.
What's that last one? Oh, show the kids how to fight.
Yes. So,
How to do it.
Yeah, we had some conflicts in front of our kids. They knew when we were upset at each other, but they also knew that we would work it out, and they oftentimes heard us go to each other and say, "Will you forgive me for dot dot dot," whatever it was,
Yeah.
you know. So, you know, we're hoping that they saw a good example of how to manage conflict and how to manage, you know, I was a lot more emotional than you were.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But, I mean, we didn't
But why? So
do
why,
it perfectly, certainly. But
So why is it important to show your kids how to fight? Because it's going to happen. They're going to get in fights with their siblings, with their spouse, with their friends, whatever. And if the only example they ever see of a conflict is this emotionally charged, angry, name-calling, bitter, hysterical, if that's all they see, then that's what they're going to think fighting looks like,
right.
you know? And it's not like you and I didn't get angry at each other. We did legitimately,
Sure.
legitimately gotten angry at each other. And they've seen that too,
Right.
you know? But, you know, from our own past, it's like my parents fought dirty. They did not fight clean ever. It was the name calling and the yelling and the alcohol and the, you know, it.
Yep.
I don't recall ever hearing my parents say, "Will you forgive me for whatever?" That never happened, right?
Mm-hmm.
But you had almost the other extreme where you never saw your parents fight.
Right.
Right.
And if my mom's listening to this, well, you know.
It's a generational thing.
Yeah. I mean,
I think that's part of
you
it.
guys probably had your arguments. They had their arguments. But in secret. And that's the way they did it.
Yeah.
And so I didn't have that example.
Yeah.
But, you know, I mean, certainly I could see why they would do it that way. It's like, you know, kids' security depends
Yes.
on the fact that the parents are staying together and
Yeah.
kind of on the same page.
Yeah.
And if they think the relationship isn't stable, then kids get anxious.
Yeah.
And so when I never experienced any kind of anxiety because my parents were fighting,
Right.
But at the same time, I mean, I hope our kids realized. I mean, I think they had to see it. It's like every time we were done, we would ask, we'd forgive each other, whatever, and we'd be back to normal.
Yeah.
And you know, they saw that. And
They didn't see us skulking around and being bitter toward each other and
Right, right.
continuing to be angry and all of, they didn't, I don't think that's what they saw.
I mean, who knows what kids see?
Right.
But that's not what we showed them.
Right.
Tried not to. Anyway.
Yeah.
Again, we weren't perfect.
When I moved in with Dad and Sherry, after I was 18, and my only example of the fighting again was just this highly charged kind of abusive alcoholic, whatever went on in my house. And then I saw Dad and Sherry, and they got in fights, and Sherry would stand up and put her nose in the air and go up to her room and close the door, and Dad would run upstairs, Sherry, we're not done talking. That's what I'd hear, and then he'd go in the room and they'd talk for a while and then they'd come back down and everything was fine. So,
Yeah.
It's like that's a good example of
Well, you saw that they were
working-
fighting.
yeah,
And you
yeah.
saw that they went to work it out. And
Yes.
You didn't hear screaming and yelling.
no.
They were talking, and
Yeah.
they came down, and things were good.
Yeah.
So
Well, okay, but this ties back to breaking the curse because this is where contempt happens.
yeah,
Is with the, when we don't fight clean and we don't focus on the issue, the real issue that's causing the problem, right? Then this is where contempt and bitterness enters in. And I have seen that destroy so many marriages. I don't even know how to count them.
right. So we have advised, don't go into a relationship with contempt.
Right.
And this is just saying, when you have conflicts, don't let contempt develop,
Right.
because it'll do the same thing. It'll eventually destroy that relationship. But really think about it. This just popped in my head. It's like, think about it. When you have contempt for somebody, what are you saying? You're saying you are high and mighty and perfect, and they're not.
Yeah.
And the thing is, you're not either.
Yeah.
So humility helps keep contempt away.
Right.
And maybe you didn't commit the grievance, or whatever the word is.
Yeah.
You didn't do the bad thing in this particular instance, but you've done some stuff,
Right.
right? So everybody does things that annoy one another. Everybody causes fights on both sides. So have a little humility and work it out, and you're going to be a lot happier, a lot more fulfilled.
And I will say, for my part, when I'm tempted to be annoyed with you or annoyed with something you said, and I start to, you start to roll it around in your head, and it just snowballs.
It can, yeah.
And because of my mindset about our marriage and our mindset about you, at least for me, and I'm not speaking highly of myself, this is something that God did for me. It's not something I did for myself. When I start to move in that direction, God pretty quickly reminds me of my own flaws and how much you've had to put up with over the years, So
We've
it's
had
just
to put up with a lot, each other, with each other, and
I know who the bigger pain in the butt is in this relationship.
I don't know.
So, God's pretty quick to remind me that I'm not perfect either. And that is something when you're pondering your spouse's faults or their, whatever, their quirks, whatever annoys you, it is something you need to step back and do a little self-reflection.
Sure.
Yeah. And that's what will keep you humble is the self-reflection, honestly.
All right.
So that's how we're tying this back to you break the curse by building your own marriage,
Right.
and by maintaining your commitment, and keeping things harmonious in your own home,
Right.
right?
And then your kids do what you've trained them to do,
Yes.
and they are able to work on their marriages,
Right.
and so on, and then you maintain your family. Okay, so we've spent a lot of time on the fight,
Yes.
but and we've probably talked about these too. So some of this is just review, but building the marriage, working on your connection. I think we've talked about that. But,
Yep. That was our last podcast, if I'm not mistaken.
right. So just to run through these real
Right.
quick, then some things you can do. And go back and listen to that podcast. That would be the first thing. But screen-free meals.
Yes.
Eat together
Yeah.
at least once a day. Have a weekly date. We've talked about
At
that.
least every other week, but every week if you can manage
It'd
it.
be best to, if you can manage it. And we said before, it doesn't have to be where you go out to an
Oh
expensive
no,
dinner or
no,
anything
we
like
we
that.
stopped doing that.
Well, we still go out.
We
but-
still go out, but not as we don't go out every week anymore. We
right.
just
So
don't.
sometimes we'll
Yeah.
have a at-home date
Yeah.
where we can make better food than for a lot less money than the restaurant. Be there for each other. So when somebody's dealing with something,
Mm-hmm.
when one of you are dealing with something, be there for the other. Plan your future together. Have some dreams. Remember stuff together. Trust each other and be worthy of that trust. So there's just some things. But go back and listen to
Right.
that episode.
Keeping the connection.
Keeping the connection
That
as
was
well.
that was our last one.
I think we went through a lot of things there.
Right.
But really, I'm just recalling an article I just read where from some psychologists, psychiatrists, I can't remember what they are, but they just said, if 6 hours a week, and I think it's a little bit more than that because the date is usually a couple hours
Ours are longer than that. Yeah.
or longer.
Yeah.
But at least an hour a day working through the day and talking about things or whatever. Some physical intimacy. And I'm not just talking about sex. I'm talking about,
Right.
when you leave to go to work for the day, connect, right? Hugs and kisses or whatever. When you get back home, same thing.
Right.
But also, take a few minutes to talk about the day with each other, or so, and of course the date, and then there may have been a couple things in there, but just
Right.
really do things that keep you connected because you're often apart for the day,
Right.
and of course we sleep, so you've got 8 hours, a few hours in the morning and a few hours in the evening, and if you just do nothing but watch TV and don't talk, then you're not building your connection, you're not
Right.
building your marriage. So anyway, that's all I've got.
Okay.
I've run out. Empty. So next time we're going to talk about, what are we going to talk about next time?
We've got a couple of topics in mind. I'm not completely sure which direction we're going to go in
You
just
don't
yet.
wanna tease it yet? So one of them was
one of them was-
compromise.
Yes, and we're
The
also
other
going
one
to talk
was-
about how Valentine's Day sucks.
And
Yeah.
we are the
Anti-Valentine's
anti-Valentine's
Day.
Day Crusaders.
Yeah, we are.
And February's coming up, so I don't know when we're going to get that one out. But
It'd probably be in a couple of weeks because that's
Well,
something
don't
we
promise
can.
that.
Yeah.
we don't
Well,
promise that.
no. But
By the end of the month.
And to
But-
say that we're anti-Valentine's Day doesn't mean we're anti-romance by any stretch of the imagination.
That's correct. Yeah.
But we might have some fun.
We should
with
do that one next. I
Yeah,
think
we should.
We should. All right. So that's been it. That's it.
Yeah.
I think we're done.
Yes, I think so.
This has been Marriage on the Half Show. Ron Exposed. Thanks, everyone. See you next time.